We've lost some truly great rappers over the last few decades, but what actually happened to these stars, and where were they finally laid to rest? Coolio burst on the scene in 1994 with the laid-back, fun-loving Fantastic Voyage, which became a #3 hit. 1 year later, he proved he could go much darker with the iconic track Gangsta's Paradise. The top single of 1995, Gangsta's Paradise famously featured in the movie Dangerous Minds and went on to win a Grammy.
Lets me know that we've been doing something good, we did something right.
When Coolio was found unconscious on the floor of a friend's bathroom on September 28, 2022, emergency medical personnel were called. Sadly though, all efforts at resuscitation failed. A heart attack was initially suspected as the cause of the rapper's death, but a coroner's investigation showed that the 59-year-old had died from a fatal overdose of multiple drugs, including fentanyl, methamphetamine, and heroin. Coolio's family opted to cremate the body of the musician and held a private and small funeral service. Afterward, some of the ashes were dispensed into an urn, while most were enclosed inside of pendant necklaces. Each of Coolio's 10 children received one of those necklaces, while a few were given to some of the rapper's other relatives. TLC stood out among the many all-female pop and R&B groups of the 1990s, not least because they were one of the only ones with a rapper. Lisa Left Eye Lopez represented the L in her trio's name. Her expansive rap breaks were highlights on many of the group's hits, including No Scrubs and Waterfalls. In 2002, Lopez decamped to rural Honduras for a spiritual retreat scheduled to last several months. That's where she was when, on April 25th, she lost control of a rental car while attempting to avoid a head-on collision. The vehicle rolled and hit a tree, and the impact caused a skull fracture that instantly killed the 30-year-old rapper. After Lopez's body was transported to Atlanta, relatives first held a private service and then a much larger one, in which a 150-person choir performed in front of a host of celebrity guests. The lyrics to Lopez's rap from Waterfalls were etched onto her casket and engraved on her headstone in the Hillendale Memorial Gardens in Georgia. In 2010, Mac Miller made his auspicious debut with the mixtape Kids, at just 18 years old no less. That tape spawned the hit Knock Knock, and his first studio album, Blue Side Park, topped the Billboard album chart the following year. Miller later became one of the most popular and prolific voices in hip-hop, producing for other rappers, starring on the TV series Mac Miller and the Most Dope Family, and releasing 4 more albums along the way. On September 7, 2018, a friend found Miller in his home in San Fernando Valley. Paramedics arrived to address what was believed to be a cardiac arrest and pronounced the rapper dead at the scene.
He never stopped helping people. He helped me. I wouldn't be who I was without him.
A toxicology report from the Los Angeles County coroner ruled that Miller, who had also endured blunt force trauma to his head and injuries to his nose, died from an accidental overdose of cocaine, alcohol, and fentanyl. He was just 26 years old. Some of the biggest hip-hop hits of the late 1990s and early 2000s were only possible due to the work of producer, singer, songwriter, and rapper Static Major. He co-wrote numerous Aaliyah hits and co-produced Pony by Genuine, and he was a credited featured performer on the #1 Lil Wayne hit Lollipop. That song was released after Static Major's death, while a long-planned full-length solo album was shelved in the wake of the tragedy. In February 2008, Static Major checked into Baptist Hospital East in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, where he was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. A poorly installed catheter line soon led to a respiratory emergency, and the 33-year-old rapper subsequently died. His body now lies in the Calvary Cemetery in Louisville, beneath a massive gravesite monument. The influential 90s hip-hop label Bad Boy Records launched the Notorious B.I.G. to superstardom, whose first major work was a feature on a remix of the 1994 hit Flava in Ya Ear. Both versions of that song featured Craig Mack, the first Bad Boy signee and star, who took that song into the pop top 10 with his agile and freewheeling vocal style. On March 12, 2018, Mack died at his South Carolina home. At the time, the cause of death was cited as a heart attack, but years later, he was revealed to have been killed by complications related to AIDS. Despite a slew of social media tributes from the many hip-hop luminaries with whom Mack worked, only one music industry figure, DJ Scratch, attended his low-key funeral. Mack's body was returned to his home in South Carolina, where he was buried in a modest grave in Overcomer Cemetery. The Atlanta-based Rich Gang dominated rap in the 2010s, and particularly Rich Homie Quan. His time in the limelight really only spanned about 2 years, but it was fruitful indeed, as the rapper made big hits out of Type of Way, Walk Through, and Flex. On September 5, 2024, however, Rich Homie Quan was discovered unresponsive in an Atlanta residence. He died later in hospital. The Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office determined that the 34-year-old had died from an unintentional overdose of drugs and that the rapper had codeine, fentanyl, and Xanax in his system at the time of his death. 12 days later, the World Changers Church International held a public and live-streamed memorial service for the rapper. Following the celebration, the rapper's casket was escorted to the Westview Cemetery in Atlanta in a white carriage pulled by a pair of white horses.
Born Gregory Edward Jacobs in 1963, Shock G became famous for forming the group Digital Underground and discovering the talent of Tupac Shakur. In 1990, Digital Underground released their first album, Sex Packets, which featured their #1 hit, The Humpty Dance. Known for their Big Ten approach to live shows, leading NPR to once describe them as a carnival on wax, the group fashioned themselves as the modern Parliament Funkadelic and even sampled much of George Clinton's music. After the success of Digital Underground, Shock G contributed vocals and production to several of Tupac's albums. Over the years, however, it's been noted that Shock G's influence on the hip-hop scene has been fairly underrated, despite his many hits. On April 22, 2021, Shock G was found dead in a hotel in Tampa, Florida. He was 57 years old. The rapper's funeral was held on May 1st at Allen Temple Church in Tampa, Florida, and he was buried at Park Lawn Memorial Cemetery. DMX stood for Dark Man X, but he was born Earl Simmons in New York in 1970. He is probably best known for his iconic gravelly voice, as well as the song Party Up in Here. DMX got his start writing for other artists such as LL Cool J and Mace, but it was his 1998 album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, made him a star. His next two albums, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, and Then There Were X, were chart toppers too. He also had an acting career starring in films such as Cradle to the Grave and Exit Wounds. On April 9, 2021, DMX died after suffering a heart attack caused by an overdose. He was 50 years old. DMX's funeral procession was emblematic of his favorite things: motorcycles, four-wheelers, and dirt bikes. DMX was then laid to rest at Oakland Cemetery in Yonkers, New York. Otherwise known as Biggie Smalls, the Notorious B.I.G. was born Christopher George Latour Wallace in Brooklyn in 1972. He rose to fame in 1994 with his debut album, Ready to Die, with hits such as Big Papa and One More Chance scoring him his first Grammy nominations, but he would never release another album. On March 9, 1997, after leaving a Soul Train Awards after-party, Biggie was shot 4 times while stopped at a red light, and his murder remains unsolved to this day. Biggie's body was sent to his hometown of New York City for his funeral, after which he was cremated and his remains were given to family members. While fans are unable to visit Biggie's final resting place, they'll still find countless murals and memorials to him all over Brooklyn. Rapper Tupac Shakur was born in Harlem in 1971. His mother gave him the name Tupac Amaru after a Peruvian revolutionary who was killed by the Spanish. Like most rap artists, Tupac got his start featuring on other major rap albums first. He sang on Digital Underground's song, Same Song, and then their album Sons of the P. He then released his first album, Tupacalypse Now, which turned him into a household name. Tupac went on to release 4 more albums before his untimely death at just 25 years of age. On September 7, 1996, Tupac was stopped at a red light in Las Vegas when a car pulled up and someone shot him 4 times. He died 6 days later from internal bleeding. Tupac was cremated, and his remains were given to his mother, Afeni Shakur. She had plans to bury his ashes in Johannesburg, South Africa, though it's not clear whether she succeeded or not. Afeni also purchased 9 acres of land in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and turned it into a peace garden with a statue of Tupac standing in the center. Unfortunately, she later sold the garden and the statue was taken down.
We look at death from the selfish side, like, that guy died. Oh, it's so sad. Why is it sad? He's away from all of this bad stuff that's here on earth.
Best known for founding the rap trio NWA with Ice Cube and Dr. Dre, Eazy-E was born Eric Lynn Wright in 1964 in Compton, Los Angeles. The group rose to fame after the release of NWA and the Posse and Straight Outta Compton in the late 80s, becoming legendary after an FBI letter regarding the anti-police sentiments in their music went public. After NWA broke up in the 90s, Eazy continued running Ruthless Records, discovering a number of great hip-hop acts along the way. In 1995, Eazy was diagnosed with AIDS and died on March 26, 1995. Eazy had a large funeral attended by family members and fans alike. Compton Mayor Omar Bradley called him Compton's favorite son and recognized that Eric made Compton famous, not just in California, but all over the world. Eazy-E was buried at Rose Hills Memorial Park in Whittier. Those wanting to pay tribute to the rapper used to be able to freely visit the gravesite, but due to littering, the family has requested that the cemetery staff not reveal its location to visitors. Born Jared Anthony Higgins in 1998, Juice WRLD was part of a new generation of artists who became famous through SoundCloud. He started out posting songs online that he had recorded onto his cell phone, and by age 19 had landed a record deal with Interscope. Sadly, just days after his 21st birthday, he died of a drug overdose. On December 8, 2019, Juice WRLD died while traveling to Chicago when his plane was investigated by federal agents. Reportedly, FBI agents were in the middle of confiscating drugs and guns from his private jet when the rapper began to seize. The agents tried to revive him, but he didn't make it. Toxicology reports showed he had died of a drug overdose. Juice WRLD is buried at Beverly Cemetery in Cook County, Illinois. Nipsey Hussle was born Ermias Joseph Askidum in Los Angeles in 1985. Famous for both his music and his entrepreneurism, he began releasing his own mixtapes and then eventually worked with other artists such as Drake and Snoop Dogg. After leaving Epic, he created his own label and sold his own mixtapes. By 2018, he'd been nominated for a Grammy and was seen as an inspiration to many for his grit, great music, and charitable spirit. On March 31, 2019, Nipsey was shot 10 times in front of his Marathon clothing store in South Los Angeles. After a very large funeral, Nipsey was buried at Forest Lawn Hollywood Hills Cemetery. Today, his Marathon clothing store still sits on the corner of Nipsey Hussle Square, which has been named as such in his honor.
The late, great neighborhood Nip. Rest in peace, cuz.
Pop Smoke was born Bashar Baraka Jackson in 1999. He was the face of the Brooklyn drill rap movement and had hit songs such as Welcome to the Party and Dior. He also went on to work with other big rap artists such as Nicki Minaj and Travis Scott. Indeed, Smoke was just getting started when he was murdered in a home invasion. On February 19, 2020, Smoke was staying at a home in the Hollywood Hills when 4 suspects entered and shot him. 4 people, 2 teenagers and 2 adults, were charged with the murder in July of that year. Smoke had an old-fashioned funeral procession in Brooklyn, his body carried throughout the streets in a see-through horse-drawn carriage. He was buried at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. Born Jesse Dwayne Ricardo Onfoy in 1998, XXXTentacion first uploaded his music to SoundCloud in 2013. His music was deeply confessional, and he was often open about his issues with depression. By the time of his death in 2018, XXXTentacion's album Question had made it to #1 on the Billboard charts, and he signed a $6 million recording contract. He died soon after at just 20 years old. On June 18, 2018, in the middle of the day, XXXTentacion was leaving a motorcycle shop when 2 masked men approached his car to rob him. One of them shot the rapper before leaving the scene. An open casket memorial was held for XXXTentacion's fans at the BB&T Center in Sunrise, Florida, and a private ceremony for close friends and family was held later. He was laid to rest in a large mausoleum at the Gardens of Boca Raton Memorial Park. Also known as Old Dirty Bastard, ODB was born Russell Tyrone Jones in 1968. He was best known for being a member of the Wu-Tang Clan in the early 1990s, although he also released his own album, Return to the 36 Chambers, the Dirty Version in 1996, which earned him a Grammy nomination. Speaking about the star, the author of ODB's biography, Mickey Hess, later explained, "The real tragedy of Dirty's treatment by the press is that for the most part, he was only in the papers for his outbursts and arrests. So when you outline his life in the headlines, he looks like a mixture of a clown or a thug or a superhero, like his life was performance art." Fans were drawn to ODB not only for his lyrics, but also his persona. He brought a level of humor and edginess to hip-hop that had never been seen before. Then on November 13, 2004, ODB died of a drug overdose at the Wu-Tang Clan studios in New York City. He was 35. ODB was cremated and his ashes were given to family members, although a mural to him still exists in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Born Jason William Mizell in 1965, Jam Master Jay was best known for creating the epic street style of the hip-hop scene in the 1980s. Black clothes, fedoras, gold chains, and most importantly, Adidas. Jam Master Jay began DJing at age 13. In 1982, he met Joseph Run Simmons and Daryl DMC McDaniels, and the 3 formed the group Run DMC. The group was hugely successful throughout the 80s, with hits such as It's Like That and Walk This Way. By 2002, Jam Master Jay was running his own record label and had discovered such talent as Onyx and 50 Cent, and then tragedy struck.
The shooting tonight in a recording studio in Queens, taking the life of the man known as Jam Master Jay. His real name, Jason Mizell.
On October 30th, 2002, Jam Master Jay was at his studio in Queens when two men broke in and shot him to death. Jam Master Jay was buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in Westchester, New York. Born Robert Earl Davis Jr. in 1971, DJ Screw was famous for engineering the Houston rap style chopped and screwed, in which music is remixed and slowed down, distorting the voice with cuts done by skipping beats and scratching sounds. He is also well known for popularizing Purple Drink, a concoction of codeine syrup and purple soda, usually mixed with lemonade and poured over ice. Screw started screwing music as a teenager and sold the tapes on his own. Before long, everyone wanted a Screw tape, and DJ Screw became an underground sensation. Sadly, DJ Screw died of a codeine overdose on November 16, 2000. Those closest to him reportedly insisted that it was his workaholic lifestyle that contributed to his heart attack, just as much as drink. At the time of his death, his regional renown had begun to spread, influencing artists such as T-Pain and Drake. DJ Screw is buried at Cunningham Cemetery in Smithville, Texas. Nate Dogg was born Nathaniel Dwayne Hale in 1969 and is most famous for the hit song Regulate, which he sang with Warren G in 1994. Nate Dogg also collaborated with artists such as Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg over the years. As rap and R&B began to overlap more in the 90s and 2000s, Nate Dogg and his experimental melodies became increasingly in demand. At the time of his death, he had been nominated for 4 Grammys. On March 15, 2011, Nate Dogg died from complications from multiple strokes. He had a stroke back in 2007 and had nearly recovered before suffering another in 2008, which left the rapper partially paralyzed and breathing through a tube. Nate Dogg's funeral was held at the Queen Mary Dome in Long Beach, where his friends Snoop Dogg and Warren G came to pay their respects. He is buried at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Long Beach.
After 8 albums, 14 years together, he dies, but you get a Grammy nomination.
Wow. Yeah, it was bittersweet, to say the least.
One half of the legendary rap duo Underground Kings, Pimp C was born Chad Butler in 1973. He and his partner Bun B were an underground sensation in the Houston rap scene until they signed with Big Time Records and released their first EP, The Southern Way, in 1988. It wasn't until 1992 that UGK really broke through into the hip-hop world, however, when they released Too Hard to Swallow, their first full-length LP. In 2002, Pimp C was arrested for violating his probation and sentenced to 8 years in prison. After a number of protests and a grassroots Free Pimp C campaign, he was released in 2005 and placed on parole until 2009. The duo released their last album in 2007, UGK Underground Kings, which was a critical and financial success. Later that year, on December 4th, Pimp C was found dead in his hotel room in Los Angeles from an accidental overdose of codeine syrup, exacerbated by sleep apnea. He is buried at Green Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery in Groves, Texas. Heavy D was born Dwight Arrington Myers in Jamaica in 1967. He was the lead singer of Heavy D and the Boys and often referred to himself as the Overweight Lover MC. 3 of the group's 5 albums went platinum, and in 1995, Heavy D became president of Uptown Records. He is also known for creating the theme song for the TV show In Living Color. On November 8, 2011, Heavy D died of a pulmonary embolism caused by deep vein thrombosis. The blood clot had developed while he was on a long flight, which then reached his lung. Up until then, Heavy D had continued recording and performing. His last performance was at the 2011 BET Awards, just a few months before his death. He was buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in LA. Big L was born Lamont Coleman in Harlem, New York in 1974. He debuted with 1992's Yes You May remix, eventually becoming well known for his talent for lyricism. Despite being signed to Columbia Records in 1993, Big L was considered too edgy for the radio, making him more of an underground sensation. Nevertheless, he eventually got to work with some of the biggest names in hip-hop, including Jay-Z and Tupac. Tragically, Big L was murdered in February 1999. He was shot 9 times while walking down a street in Harlem, and his murder remains unsolved to this day. Big L was laid to rest at George Washington Memorial Park in New Jersey. Chris Kelly was born in Atlanta in 1978 and is known as one member of the duo Criss Cross with his friend Chris Smith. Their song Jump became a #1 hit when they were only 13 years old, making them the first Lil rappers to become famous. They also popularized the trend of wearing their baggy clothes backwards. Sadly, the duo would never again release a song as popular as Jump. They parted ways after releasing their 1996 album Young, Rich, and Dangerous. Kelly continued to work in music after going to school to learn studio engineering. On May 1, 2013, the 34-year-old Kelly was found unresponsive with multiple drugs in his system. His mother said that he had used heroin mixed with cocaine the night before, so it is suspected that he died of a drug overdose. Chris Kelly is buried at Westview Cemetery in Atlanta. Proof was born Deshaun Dupree Holton in 1973. He was a founding member of the million-earning Shady family, a collective that helped put Detroit's music on the map. The family became particularly famous, of course, following the success of Eminem. Proof is known for his albums Devil's Night and D12 Wrld, and he was a mentor at the heart of the Detroit hip-hop scene. At Proof's funeral, Eminem said, "Without Proof, there would be a Marshall Mathers, but there would not be an Eminem. There would not be a D12, and there would not be a Slim Shady." On April 11, 2006, Proof was murdered at the CCC nightclub in Detroit. The police stated that Proof had shot a man named Keith Bender Jr., who later died before Bender's cousin, Mario Etheridge, shot back and killed the rapper. Proof's casket was taken by a horse-drawn carriage to his final resting place, Woodlawn Cemetery in Detroit. Lil Peep was born Gustav Elijah R. in 1996 in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He got his start creating music in his bedroom at home and later moved to Los Angeles to pursue music. He began uploading his songs to SoundCloud, where he developed a large following. Lil Peep made 2 mixtapes, Crybaby and Hellboy, and then released the album Come Over When You're Sober Part 1. Sadly, on November 15, 2017, Lil Peep died of a drug overdose in Tucson, Arizona. He was only 21 years old. The rapper had been touring extensively, performing in the US and across Europe, and was on tour when he passed. Lil Peep was cremated and his ashes buried in his grandfather's garden.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.